Welcome to G Fun Facts Online, where we dive deep into the science behind our world. Today, we're tackling a subject you've seen 100 times in movies and TV shows: the confession, an admission of guilt. It feels like the final, satisfying click of a puzzle piece, falling into place in a criminal investigation. For law enforcement, and for us, the public, it often signals case closed. But what if I told you that this final piece is often warped, bent, or sometimes belongs to a completely different puzzle? The journey to a confession is rarely a straight line. It's a complex psychological odyssey into the very depths of human nature, a powerful drama of internal turmoil meeting external pressure. Understanding why any suspect, especially one facing years behind bars, would admit to a terrible crime requires a journey into the intricate and sometimes frightening workings of the human mind. Let's begin. For those who have indeed committed a crime, the mind can become a prison long before any cell doors slam shut. The act of confessing, in this context, can feel like a desperate search for a key. Imagine carrying a secret so heavy it reshapes your entire world. This is the crushing weight of guilt, a corrosive force that eats away at your sense of self. It can create such an intense internal pressure, a form of self-hostility, that admitting the truth feels like the only way to release the valve. Confession becomes a form of atonement, the first painful step toward making amends and quieting the storm inside. Then there's a fascinating psychological concept called cognitive dissonance. This is the profound mental discomfort we feel when our actions contradict our beliefs or our self-image. Most people see themselves as generally good. So, if a good person commits a bad act, they exist in a state of intense psychological tension. Their actions and their identity are at war. Confessing can be a way to resolve this war. By admitting the wrongdoing, they can reframe the narrative. They are no longer just a person who did a bad thing. They are a person who is taking responsibility, a person seeking to rectify their wrongs. This act aligns their behavior with a more palatable self-image, bringing a powerful sense of emotional release. It's a way to finally unburden themselves from the secret that has caused so much internal conflict. But this internal world is only half the story. Now let's step into the interrogation room itself. This isn't just any room. It's a crucible, a stage meticulously designed for a psychological performance. The environment is inherently stressful, and this stress and anxiety are not byproducts. They are tools. They significantly impact a suspect's cognitive functions, making them more tired, more confused, and ultimately more susceptible to suggestion and manipulation. At the heart of many modern interrogations, especially in the United States, is a well-known and highly scrutinized method called the Reid Technique. This isn't a friendly chat. It's a 9-step dance where the lead interrogator assumes you are guilty from the very start. The process begins with direct confrontation. We have evidence you committed this crime. It then moves into theme development, where the interrogator offers moral justifications or excuses for the crime, minimizing its severity to make confessing seem more palatable. They will relentlessly handle any denials, cutting the suspect off, insisting on their guilt, and creating a sense of hopelessness. The final step often involves presenting the suspect with two choices. Say, did you plan this out, or was it a mistake that just happened? Both options, of course, are an admission of guilt. Critics argue, quite forcefully, that the guilt-presumptive nature of the Reid technique creates a slippery slope, especially for the innocent, pushing them down a path that leads directly to a false confession. But the interrogator's toolbox doesn't end there. Ever seen the good cop, bad cop routine in movies? It's a classic for a reason. One officer is aggressive and intimidating, raising the suspect's anxiety. Then, the good cop steps in, offering empathy, understanding, and a bottle of water. This sharp contrast makes the suspect feel a sense of trust and relief with the good cop, making them far more likely to open up. Another tactic is minimization. The interrogator might downplay the crime, saying things like, "Anyone would have done the same thing in your position," or "I get it, you were under a lot of pressure." This implies that a confession will lead to more lenient treatment, making it seem like a rational choice. Perhaps most shockingly, in many places, police are legally allowed to lie. They can falsely claim to have found the suspect's DNA at the crime scene. They can lie and say an accomplice has already confessed and implicated them. For an individual already crumbling under stress and isolation, this fabricated evidence can make their situation seem utterly hopeless. It can feel like the truth no longer matters, and a confession is the only way out. This brings us to the most bewildering and, frankly, terrifying aspect of this entire topic: false confessions. It defies our basic instinct for self-preservation. Why on earth would an innocent person admit to a crime they didn't commit? Sometimes a crime as serious as murder. Yet, it is a documented reality that has sent numerous innocent people to prison. Psychologists have broken this disturbing phenomenon down into three main categories. First, you have voluntary false confessions. These are admissions made without any prompting or pressure from the police. The motivations here are often rooted in deep psychological issues. It could be a pathological need for attention or a twisted desire for punishment. In other cases, a person might confess to protect the actual perpetrator, like a parent covering for a child. Or, in the most extreme cases, an individual might have a delusional belief that they are actually guilty. Next, and most commonly, we have compliant false confessions. This is where the suspect knows they are innocent, but they confess anyway. Why? To escape the immediate, unbearable stress of the interrogation. Imagine being in a small room for hours on end, deprived of sleep, facing aggressive, relentless questioning. The intense pressure, the isolation, the fear of a harsher outcome if you don't cooperate. It can lead an individual to believe that confessing is the most rational choice to end their current suffering. They are not admitting guilt. They are choosing the path of least resistance to make the pain stop, often believing that the truth of their innocence will eventually come out. But the rabbit hole goes deeper, leading us to the most unsettling category: persuaded or internalized false confessions. In these truly disturbing cases, an innocent person, through highly suggestive and manipulative interrogation techniques, comes to doubt their own memory. They begin to believe they might have actually committed the crime. An interrogator might suggest scenarios like repressed memories or alcoholic blackouts. Over hours of questioning, the suspect's confidence in their own mind erodes. They become so confused and vulnerable that they internalize the narrative fed to them by the police, creating false memories of an event that never happened. Certain people are far more vulnerable to this. Young people, for example, are more impressionable and often eager to please authority figures. Likewise, individuals with intellectual disabilities or certain personality traits that make them highly compliant are at a much greater risk of being persuaded that they are guilty of a crime they could not have possibly committed. Now, it's easy to picture the investigator as a dispassionate seeker of truth. But they are human, and the human mind is full of shortcuts and biases that can dramatically influence an interrogation. One of the most dangerous of these is confirmation bias. This is our natural tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information that confirms what we already believe. If an investigator walks into the room with a strong gut feeling that the suspect is guilty, they will subconsciously look for evidence that supports that belief. They'll ask guilt presumptive questions. They'll interpret normal nervousness as a sign of deception. They'll dismiss denials as the lies of a guilty person. This can create a self-fulfilling prophecy where the investigator's own belief shapes the interrogation into a confession-generating machine, regardless of the suspect's actual innocence. Coupled with this is another cognitive trap called the fundamental attribution error. This is our tendency to believe that what people do reflects who they are, rather than the situation they are in. An investigator might see a suspect's agitated state not as a completely natural reaction to a high-stress, accusatory interrogation, but as definitive proof of a guilty conscience. They attribute the behavior to a flawed character, not the extreme pressure of the circumstances. So what does this all mean? The journey to a confession is a treacherous psychological path, not a simple quest for truth. It reveals a process where the internal world of guilt and dissonance meets the external world of intense pressure and manipulation, sometimes with devastating consequences for the innocent. Thankfully, we're not powerless in the face of this. There are paths forward. Many experts and advocacy groups call for safeguards. Mandating the videotaping of all interrogations, from start to finish, provides an objective record, holding everyone accountable. Furthermore, promoting less confrontational, more information-gathering interrogation techniques, like the peace model used in the United Kingdom, can help minimize the risk of false confessions by focusing on rapport building and fact-finding rather than psychological coercion. Ultimately, understanding the fragile, complex, and powerful psychology at play in the interrogation room isn't just a fascinating intellectual exercise. It is essential to safeguarding the very idea of justice. It's a crucial reminder that the pursuit of truth must always be tempered with a deep, compassionate understanding of the vulnerabilities of the human mind. Thanks for tuning in to Fun Facts Online.